Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Professor Dr. Rusni Hassan, one of the top Islamic finance professionals, not only in Malaysia but also in Pakistan. Currently, she is Mashallah Deputy Dean of International Islamic University, Malaysia, and one of the very prominent lady, Shariah scholar. Her knowledge and expertise is known to everybody. And I'm so honored that she agreed to speak to my students in Pakistan. So, Dr. Rusni Hassan, from the core of our heart, we welcome you. And the mic is over to you for your talk for our MS Islamic Banking and Finance students. Thank you very much for accepting my request. Over to you, Doctor.
Thank you very much, Dr. Irum. What we call it, my friend. Okay, the first time I know him, I know her when she was in Malaysia, but we keep on communication and whatnot. Of course, what we call it, I mean that in terms of the Islamic finance, we are very close one another. In terms of the community, academic community in particular. Islamic finance to me is something that is borderless, you know, it doesn't belong to any specific jurisdiction. Okay, thank you very much for inviting me, Dr. Irum, and then to everyone, the students. Okay, happy to share my thoughts on what we call it, the COVID-19 pandemic, okay, the crisis that we are facing now, okay, and then what are the effects to Islamic banking and finance. So I'm going to share the screen. Okay, can you see the screen?
Yes.
The data, can you,
yes.
You can see?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to take what we call it, if possible, about half an hour to go through the slides. And then afterward, I think it will be better for us to have a discussion because that is more impactful. Okay. Now, I'm going to start with Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So we are going to look what we call it into the topic that we're going to share today. Then I'm looking into the few items, okay, that we are going to discuss today, the introductory part, and then we're going to see into the challenges to Islamic finance, challenges of COVID-19 to Islamic finance. I'm going to go into as well the specific Shariah issues that we face in Islamic banking in particular, as regards to the what we call it, you know, the issues that we face on COVID-19 in particular. And then of course, behind whatever that happened in terms of the challenges, definitely is there the opportunities. Okay, we're going to see a bit on that opportunities that you know in front of us as regards to Islamic finance. I'm going to conclude. Okay. Now, of course, when we see what we call it, I'm looking at all the image of COVID is very beautiful, right? There must be some blessings out of that. Okay, all the, you know, image on COVID is very beautiful. It's something mysterious about it, but the fact that how beautiful the creature of Allah. There must be some blessings out of that or whatever happened. Okay, I'm not going to go into that aspect. However, I'm going to go direct to the Islamic finance, the effect and whatnot, because I believe that, you know, people have been talking about how we Muslims should respond to COVID and whatnot. Okay, it was quite such time, a long time for us, you know, facing these issues. My point, looking into the what we call it, the pandemic of COVID-19, and what are the economic activities, and then the effect to the economy. It is something that is known to all of us. Of course, we are talking about, you know, the stop of economic activities, not only in our respective countries, but also globally. So we will be facing something that is unprecedented, something that we have known before, something that is, you know, we do not know how we're going to respond to that. Okay, Definitely economic, what we call it, effect of the COVID as well is going to be very significant. There's a lot of study now have been done. Okay, World Bank, for example, have come out with a report on COVID and then the effect of the economic effect of COVID. Again, we are looking at the, if you look into the report, every report are talking about the worst ever, what we call it, economic impact, deepest global recessions. We are looking into all the, I would say, very strong words, and those words are very scary. Yeah, because we do not know what's going to happen. It's just a lot of uncertainty in this world nowadays as regards to what's going to happen, not only in the economic perspective, but also in other aspects of life. Okay, so something that is beyond us, beyond our imagination, but we believe that we as Muslim, we believe that there must be something, wisdom behind or whatever happened here. Okay. So these crises definitely need what we call it urgent attention from all stakeholders, from all what we call it countries of the world. And then definitely we are talking about there are two keywords when we talk about COVID here. We're talking about health issues, and we're talking about the economic issues. These are the two things that is very, very important and significant as regards to the COVID-19. Of course, we are talking about the vulnerable group of people, but the point here is that regardless of whether you are rich or you're poor, now COVID is, you are vulnerable to COVID. Okay, so there's no such thing of the differences between you, whether you are B40, you are M40 or what. We don't have that, what we call it, classification anymore as regards to the impact of the COVID. So we are talking about all people are become vulnerable to the what we call it COVID effect, and not only on health but also as well as the economic consequences to every single one of us. So the issue here is that when we are going to recover, we do not know. It's a big question mark out there. Okay. Of course, this is what we call it World Bank report, which was issued in June 2020 as regards to the economic threat of global recession. Definitely, World Bank said that most countries will be facing recession in 2020. But how strong or how what we call it severe the recession is depends very much on the countries. Okay. And of course, as compared to, whatever the recession that we faced in 1990 and whatnot, okay, World Bank said that we are going to have the most severe, okay? It's going to be very fast, okay, the recession, because we do not know, right? Because we are not, the point here is simple, that we cannot be doing our economic activities to recover or whatever loss, whatever, happened to all of us. Because we can't go out, we cannot be doing our job as usual. So these are something that very serious, and then that I would say we do not know how to handle this. Okay, so of course there are studies, but I don't find so far the studies that come out with a very solid solution, because we are still struggling now. But most of the report on COVID talking about what's going to be impact. Okay, definitely we are talking about what we call it extreme poverty. We are talking about recession, which is going to be very severe. We do not know. Again, the word that comes always is that unprecedented. We do not know how we're going to tackle that. Okay, so we see all this report that we are going to go zoom, going really down, rather than Zoom looking at all of us. Okay, of course, this is the, the blessing in disguise is that this technology. Prior to this is, of course, if I were to talk to you guys, Dr. Irum will invite me to go out there, fly over there. Took me about few hours, right? And then most often than not, I'm so sorry, Dr. Irum invited me quite a number of times, but all the time that I cannot come because of other commitments. But see, the beauty of whatever happened here today here is that when Dr. Irum this time around text me saying that can I, what we call it, invited me to address to all of you, I said, why not? Okay, because time difference is not an issue, right? I don't need to travel, or else, you know, it will take me about about a day before I reach what we call it, Pakistan. So Alhamdulillah, definitely there must be some blessings in disguise or whatever happened. Now, of course, again, we are talking about, you know, all regions will be facing the downgrades in terms of the growth. Okay, World Bank report, of course, there are details in terms of the growth that what we call it, you know, that they're going that you know, Bank Negara, sorry, World Bank is provide the report on that. Again, we are talking about extreme poverty. Okay, so all this, we are talking about people all over the world will be facing this. This is something so serious. This is something that is, again, beyond imagination. At this point of time, we might be very comfortable, but out there, there are people who don't have any food even to eat. Yeah, but we are, alhamdulillah, still okay. Okay, but there are many people out there are still are having a lot of problems there. Okay, so these are something that is, of course, all of us know. Okay, now this is the topic that we are going to discuss actually. Yeah, so the introductory part, of course, as regards to the economic impact. Of course, the keywords is that the economic impact, the downgrades, the extreme poverty, unprecedented challenges, and whatnot. All those are the keywords. Okay, because something that is unimaginable, beyond our imagination. Now, let's see what are the challenges to Islamic finance in particular. Okay, now, of course, when we look into pre-pandemic, okay, pre-pandemic, we can be proud of of the growth of Islamic finance. Okay, so 2.5 trillion is our asset globally last year. Okay, there's a lot of demand for Islamic finance, regardless from Muslim or non-Muslim. People are crazy about Islamic finance. Why people are so, what we call it, attracted to Islamic finance? I believe that you know the reason why. Because we are very prudent. The answer to that, okay? All the, what we call it, prudential, what we call it, regulation, and that we are adopting in Islamic finance is that. Okay, now simply that, for example, for conventional finance, we are talking about corporate governance. But for Islamic finance, we have double governance there. Okay, not only we observe corporate governance, but also the Shariah governance. So we are very prudent in terms of the requirement. We are very stable in that. Okay, that is proven when Islamic finance, of course, the Islamic finance was have gone through the challenge of global financial crisis, the previous one, right? So we managed to get through. Of course, we are not saying that Islamic finance have not impacted at all. There are impact to Islamic finance for the last financial crisis, but the impact is very small, was very small. Okay, and that is due to our good practice of Islamic finance. I mean that you have learned, you have maybe read the literature. The main reason why Islamic finance are not affected by the global financial crisis previously, because our good practice, our Shariah practice, the requirement of zakat that we observe throughout. Okay, because of course, the global financial crisis in US was created because of over-collateralized debt. But we have in Islamic finance, the rules in Shariah that, number one, whatever that we want to do the transaction, it cannot be loan, because loan, you don't have anything behind. What is the basis? You don't have the asset. But for Islamic finance, you must find the asset first. Of course, to some, that becomes an obstacle. That's a constraint. Or we cannot do because conventional, they can just release the loan, whatever amount, right? But to us, before we want to create that liability, we must find the asset. But it happened, it proven that our practice of Islamic finance, When we said about Islamic finance means that this is what Allah have given us. Allah have given us, this is ordained by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that the requirement of akad must be observed. The simple requirement of akad is that whenever you want to do transaction, you must find the good asset there. Okay? So in every single transaction that we want to do, definitely we have the asset. So the asset is our backup. In the case of whatever happened, we can recover to the asset itself. So that is why, as compared to conventional, because the underlying is that. So when anything happen, collapse, for example, they cannot recover to the asset. They can only, because they recover, there's nowhere that they can return to, basically. So those are the what we call it, example of why Islamic finance are less, I would say, affected as regards to the financial crisis that we faced previously. Okay, so that also the proof that actually the system that Shariah, what we call it, have given to us, to people to adopt, okay, which is free from riba and whatnot, is the best ever. Okay, that is proven. That is proven. Okay. Now, however, when we talk about Islamic finance, we are not saying that we are perfect, we are the best ever. We are always in the process of improving ourselves. Okay, there are a number of issues that we face in Islamic finance, but so far we are much better compared to conventional. But there are, of course, rooms for us to improve. Okay, now, the last financial crisis teach us on few things, that Islamic finance is always better alternative as compared to conventional. Okay, we have, this is the second item, is very important, because we have this Islamic social finance solutions that always back us up. Okay, the beauty of wakaf, the concept of wakaf, zakat, sadaqah, which cannot be challenged by anyone, which cannot be challenged by any other religion, that is solely belong to us. So this is our strength. Okay, so it is always there, and then we can see that the what we call it, the function of Islamic social finance are very much highlighted, particularly in the case of the pandemic that we are facing. Okay, we can see that these are the way forward for Islamic finance in terms of solving the issues that we face, particularly as regards to the COVID-19 pandemic. Okay, moving forward. Of course, we have developed, Islamic finance have developed not only banking, not only social finance, wakaf and whatnot, even though for wakaf, some Islamic social finance may be less developed as compared to other commercial aspects such as banking, takaful, and capital market. But the fact that the development of Islamic finance and the sectors of Islamic finance have governed all those aspects. So we have Islamic capital market instruments, for example, sukuk and whatnot. Okay, all these are also the instruments or the infrastructure that Islamic finance provide to ensure that the growth of the countries, particularly the countries, the major countries who practice Islamic finance, they are less affected because it's always there. Okay, to support us in terms of the infrastructure. Of course, again, on the point on the real asset, I did mention we have real asset, okay, rather than debt all the way. Okay, so that's why we are different. Now, of course, when we talk about Islamic, what we call it, COVID, we are talking about unprecedented issues. We have yet to know how we are going to handle the issue as the challenges that we face as regards to the COVID-19. Okay, now when we look into the challenge, okay, I'm looking into, of course, I will not be able to list down what are the what we call it, all the issues here as regards to the the crisis, COVID-19 crisis. But the first thing that come into my mind when we talk about the challenges that we face is as the effect of COVID-19 is that the regulatory and supervisory challenge. Okay, because again, we are talking about unprecedented. So we do not know. The regulator do not know how to handle. How are we going to do Islamic, how are we going to deal with the Islamic finance? Okay, how are we going to ensure the robustness of Islamic banks and Islamic financial institutions? Okay, how are we going to ensure that the growth of Islamic finance are there? And what more in the country where you have two dual banking system, dual financial system, right? How are we going to ensure that the level playing field between both Islamic banking, Islamic finance, as well as conventional finance? We have been facing this issue before, but the issue which is more serious that we are facing here is very different than, you know, what we have been having it before. Okay, so I'm looking into the regulatory challenge here. Okay, in the terms, in the sense that, for example, okay, you know, of course, when we talk about regulatory considerations, you know, transparency, okay, to what extent, the question is that when the regulator should come in and intervene to resolve issues faced by people, faced by Islamic banks, as well as the issues faced by the customers of Islamic bank. Should the regulator give the priority to the people or to the bank? Now, if we were to protect and facilitate and ease the people, what's going to happen to the bank? Bank is going to face a serious issues. Okay, and that happened. Now, moratorium is a good example. I'm not sure whether in Pakistan, whether the government have given the moratorium to the people or not.
They have given.
Okay. They have given. Okay, most of the government have given. So now the question is always, this moratorium generally are always for the protection of the public, of the people, consumers, customers or client of Islamic bank. But having said that, the regulator also need to be thinking that what is the effect of the moratorium, okay, to the Islamic bank itself. Okay, so this is something, you know, Malaysia is a good example. I mean that if I were to share the example of Malaysia, now the Minister of Finance have already announced that the effect, the number, okay, that you know have been the number of repayment of loan, conventional and Islamic so far in Malaysia, okay, due to moratorium facilities given by the regulator amounting to 51 billion. These are the amount that financial institutions, okay, conventional and Islamic, have to absorb because of only, I mean that we give the moratorium for 3 months or 6 months, for example. The customer are not paying. The effect is very severe. Okay, I think that the moratorium is the biggest issue that we need to be facing at this point of time. Very specific as regards to the Islamic banking in particular. Of course, LOLR, lender of last resort. Regulator need to be prepared for this, right? There's a possibility that one of the Islamic bank, if it is mandatory, if for example the government said that mandatory, you must be giving all your client moratorium for 6 months, for example, and we do not know how long. Sometimes it could be prolonged, right? There's a possibility, and there is a possibility as well, because if the institution, if the bank, if that particular bank cannot absorb the cost, cannot absorb the shock of this economic impact, they just were to say, sorry, I'm not in the business anymore. Okay, but before that, the regulator need to be thinking how can they rescue, because it is not the fault of that particular Islamic bank, but because something that is beyond us. Okay, so Now, they need to be prepared. They need to be prepared. Okay, their LOLR, lender of last resort facilities regulation on that, okay, need to be looked at to ensure it is a bit more flexible, because there's a possibility that many financial institutions will be needing this facility from the government. Okay, so of course, another important aspect is that now not only the regulator but also individual bank need to be rethink about their stress testing. Previously, you know, stress testing is only talking about for Islamic bank. For example, our stress testing is always on the, Shariah compliant related matters. But now it is beyond this. Okay, beyond that. Okay, so something that we need to look at. Again, the insolvency regime, okay, need to be looked at as well. Means that the regulator need to be rethink. What are the criteria? What are the conditions? Okay, previously maybe you are saying, oh, if your what we call it reserve reduced by 5%, then you are near insolvent. But not anymore now. Okay, they need to be very flexible now. So this need a lot of thinking from the regulatory perspective. Something that again beyond, they cannot learn from any other country, because all institutions in the world are facing the same thing. Okay, so that definitely need the creativity and then special handling, case-to-case basis based on different jurisdiction experience. We cannot rely on Basel anymore, because they don't have any case study that they can share with us. Okay, so something that we need to be learning from on our own. Okay, so these are the challenge that we face. Now, specific Sharia issues, of course, I did mention about moratorium. Okay, for what we call it, my own personal experience, out of whatever issues that we face, okay, moratorium is the most, what we call it, delicate issues that we need to tackle, taking into consideration of the requirement of Sharia, fiqh, muamalat, and whatnot. Okay, because simply that when the government or the regulator come up with the instruction that all Islamic banks must give moratorium to their customers, they are not supposed to be charging any profit during that period. Now, what comes immediately? What comes immediately to us, okay, to Islamic bank, is that how are we going to do this? Does it mean that we need to extend? Of course, 6 months they are not paying. In Malaysia, for example, until September. Okay, April until September. So, how are we going to do? I mean, are we going to absorb everything here? The best is, of course, wow, fanaziratun. I mean that if someone is in difficulty, then we should be given them respite. Means that we shouldn't be charging them anything. So our customers, our client are in difficulty, they cannot pay, right? So the best is that we absorb all. But remember, when we absorb the loss, okay, what are we going to pay to our investors, shareholders, and depositors? There's always an issue there, okay? So we need to be balanced on this, okay? So far, we can see that there are few forms of moratorium. Either you extend the contractual period, okay? That could be one. That can be one way of moratorium. Means that, rather than 10 years, then you have additional 6 months, for example, and whatnot, okay? So there's also what we call it possibility of moratorium, in the sense that, okay, they said, no, we are not going to extend, but within this period of moratorium, no payment is charged. Okay, you just pay your principal. Profit will not be charged, for example. Some, however, go that, well, you need to pay, but if there is any extension, then, okay, there will be no charge out of that. Okay, and the last scenario of forms of moratorium whereby, okay, the Islamic bank need to modify the contract. The contract need to be totally modified because they cannot absorb the loss. Okay, so then again, the Islamic bank need to be able to classify what category of their customer should go for option 1, option 2, and option 3. Okay, so there's a lot of studies that they need to do. They need to do a new kind of study of the portfolio of their consumers and clients rather than the normal, I would say, assessment on the credit. On credit worthiness, it's not. But now we are talking about a different kind of study altogether. The question is always, do we have the expertise? Because we don't have any benchmark here. Okay, so that depends very much. So every bank have a different criteria to classify their customers and consumers based on their own assessment. That result to, in terms of the public, public are confused. Why in bank A, they give me moratorium, such and such, option 1. But why then in bank B, they give me option number 3? So that's always the issue, and then that we need to handle in this case. Okay, of course, moratorium can be of 2 ways, either mandatory or optional. Why I'm giving this what we call it overview, so that later on it relates to the Shariah issue, to akad itself. Okay, example, if it is mandatory moratorium, okay, without you don't need to get the consent of the customer. But optional, in the case of optional moratorium, you need to get the consent. Okay. Now the question here is that if there is any variation of the akad, I'm looking to the Shariah perspective here. Variation of the akad because, okay, originally, for example, it was murabahah for 5 years. Now they will be giving you another extension due to moratorium. So it's going to be 5 years, 6 months, for example. Right? So that is a variation of the contract. If it is a mandatory moratorium, means that by hook or by crook, okay, you have to give it. Must you go to every single customer and get their consent to vary the akad or not? Okay, that is unlikely because it is mandatory. Okay, now as compared to the optional moratorium, of which the party or the customer must go, and then you must be meeting this customer, say, okay, then I apply. Okay, you made an application. This is much easier. We are more familiar with this kind of arrangement, whereby if there is any variation of the akad, we notify the customer agree with it, maybe sign a simple, what we call it, piece of paper, okay, representing the, I would say, variation of the akad, then it's good. So now, option number 2 is whereby we can say that the taradi, the requirement of taradi, mutual consent, is fulfilled as compared to number 1, mandatory. Okay, now bank, respective Islamic bank must be careful how they treat. They cannot be treating the same, mandatory and optional. They cannot be saying that, oh, everything because government instruction, therefore, oh, I don't need to go into the customer, ask the customer whether they are okay with that or not. No, it cannot be as simple as that. Okay, so these are something, because we're talking about akad. Variation of the akad, if it is affecting the fundamentals or the rukun or essential requirement, you need to do another akad. That is as simple as, that is the requirement of Shariah as regards to the akad. So we need to be very careful. It involves what we call it a detailed Shariah examination analysis of the situation, because it involves a different hukum. If we are not careful, we may be terminating the akad, and we are not doing the akad, we are not executing the akad. Maybe we are charging the customer later on to pay on there's no such basis of the akad. Without we realizing there's no akad there. So what are then the money that they collected? What is the status of the money collected from the customer? Is it going to be riba? It looks simple, when the moratorium looks simple, but the implication is big. If it happened to be, if for example it is riba, on what basis then Islamic Bank recognized this as a profit? So those issues are very big. Okay. So again, these are the issue. For example, the deferred profit. Can we claim the deferred profit? Yeah. So here, of course, in Malaysian context, Bank Negara, the central bank said clearly that the deferred profit you cannot claim. The deferred, you cannot be charging any deferred profit. What you can charge is only the principal. Now, the Islamic Bank in Malaysia, however, facing, because again, the portfolio of the customer are different. If the amount of the financing is very small, we can say, okay, no problem, you just pay us the principal. Okay, we absorb whatever profit, we are not charging you any profit. Okay, now if we talk about the corporate client, whereby the financing is 100 millions, if we waive the profit that we are supposed to be getting on monthly basis from this client A may be 2 or 3 million, right? And can we just say that, okay, don't worry, we are not charging you the 3 million? Okay, so some banks are facing a serious problem, a serious issue. They said that they have studied, that they say that we cannot be. So they need to classify the category of the customer into a different portfolio. One, they go into the point, okay, we charge you the principal, no deferred profit, nothing. The second one, however, they said, no, we can't afford to do that. Okay, because if we were to waive your profit, the profit charged to you, we are going to be having a serious problem. So what they do, what they are doing is that what they propose to the customer is that, okay, let us sit down, renegotiate our terms, and most often than not, they restructure. Okay. Now, that is again, however, when we talk about restructure, we need to get the consent from the customer because we are talking about a new akad altogether. This is where, okay. Of course, some goes to rescheduling. Rescheduling seems to be much more simple because there is only extension of time. Okay, extension of time. But when it comes to restructure, we are talking about a new akad. Now, when we talk about the new akad, from the legal perspective, there's always the issue of tax. Once it is a fresh akad, a fresh document, therefore, you may be subject to certain payment of tax. Is there any exemption? Even in Malaysia so far, there's no announcement from the regulator whether is there any exemption for restructuring of the facility whereby fresh document is executed or are executed. Are they to be exempted from paying the tax? So far, no decision yet. We are still looking, okay? But these are the issue. To whom? Who should bear the cost? Should it be on the bank? Wow, bank is losing 3 months on one customer, corporate customer. I mean that 3 million already. And now you are saying that a new document, bank should absorb. That sounds to be unreasonable. But if we were to impose to the customer, that would be more damaging. I mean that we are supposed to be protecting them, right? But now we are saying, oh, we don't know. Then again, okay, this is always the issue. Almost now every single week, okay, these are the deliberation that we do have at the bank level. So now, Dr. Irum, we are very busy now. Every week there's a meeting. There's a meeting because there's always an issue that we need to resolve. It's a Shariah issue. Okay. Now, simply, for example, execution of the new akad, as I did mention, what kind of cases that we need to issue notice to the customer? Okay. So must we get direct consent from all customers, or we just issue a simple notice and then The rest is considered as, good already. Okay. Is it considered as deemed consent? Deemed consent is sufficient? Means that deemed consent means, okay, we issue a notice. Please communicate to the bank if you are agreeable with such terms, variation. If we don't listen from you, we don't hear from you within 2 weeks, you consider consent to it. So we put, is that sufficient? Okay. Now, the Shariah mind, from the Shariah perspective, on my side, I would say no. If we are talking about execution of a new akad, whereby the requirement of the rukun and essential requirements are new altogether, I would say deemed consent is not sufficient to execute a new akad. But then again, we need to balance between, can we do that within, so, because we are not talking about customer who are two or three people. We're talking about thousands of customers. Okay, so these are something that we need to be really, really, what we call it, decide properly. Okay, and most often than not, we do not have evidence or proof to support. And that is the reason why it's very difficult for us to decide. Okay. Now, I cannot say that my decision is always right. No, cannot be. Because now there's no precedent. So we need to really look into the case-to-case basis. Okay. And thus, as I did mention, you are good. It is going to be, now is very, what we call it, busy time for all of the Sharia scholars. Okay. Now, of course, again, we are talking about, for our investment account holder, for the mudarabah. Okay, we just will be telling them, I mean that, previously we can say, oh, it's good, we promote mudarabah account holder because it's good, the basis. But now we will be telling them, our communication to them, sorry, we cannot give you anything because there's no collection on our part. So please, this is a mudarabah, so you need to be prepared for the loss. Do you think that these people are going to stay with you? Are they going to be happy? Okay. Those who say that, well, this period we are helping people, no problem. But there are not many people who are that way. The expectation is, of course, different from one customer to the other. This is a very serious issue because now is the time where you really, really have to tell them that I'm so sorry, I cannot promise you anything. Because our business is going down, we cannot collect payment, but instead we need to top up our own money, our shareholders' money, and therefore we will not be able to pay you. Okay, so how are we going to communicate to our customer? Okay, of course, disclosure is another requirement, another aspect, another challenge faced. Okay, IOFI has come out in May. Okay, as regards to what is the expectation as regards to the disclosure requirement. What IOFI require is that bank, in their financial statement, means that the next financial statement, they must be able to disclose the details as regards to the moratorium given, okay, and then how the treatment, what is the effect to that, okay, the effect to restructuring. So we are now talking about different kind of reporting altogether, not the normal one. Okay. Of course, IOFI statement, the statement is that this is voluntarily given. Okay, even it is not mandatory, but it should be voluntary. So all jurisdiction who adopt IOFI must take that into consideration. Okay, in terms of the disclosure. So come next, what we call it, financial statement. Okay, you need to be prepared as regards to the report on the pandemic COVID-19 and the impact to your asset and abilities. Again, I think we are going to, there are not many slides anymore. So these are basically what we can offer. The opportunities are there for Islamic finance. I'm sharing this as example in the slides. What are the incentives that we are? Because in this situation, the crisis, we can see that actually everyone every sectors and industry are helping one another. Basically, we can see the spirit of ta'awun, helping one another and whatnot. This is example of what financial institutions have given to the people as regards to the facilities, to facilitate the people, SMEs and whatnot. Okay, the detail you can read it later. Okay, I've shared the slides with Dr. Irum, who can share with all of you later on. Of course, the most impactful in the Malaysian case is, of course, SMEs. Okay, small, medium, but we are talking MS, what we call it, MSME as well. So we need to be helping them. Okay, so the opportunities and role of Islamic Bank is very much focused at this point of time on this micro, small, and medium enterprise because they need help. Okay, so they need, of course, we need to be they have to be creative, they have to be very bold in terms of their products and offering. They need to be providing, they must be facilitative enough in terms of providing products and product and services to the SME in particular. They must be very innovative. Innovative, that's why my word just now is very bold, because it cannot be like normal before. You must be brave enough, okay, providing, because the need is there. And then you cannot just close your eyes and saying that, no, I'm not giving you because my risk, people cannot evaluate your risk. It cannot be that way anymore, okay? It needs to be very bold decision made by the Islamic banks. Okay, this is to me what I'm so happy to see this, okay, as regards to the socially responsible finance. Of course, we know about CSR, ESG, SRI, impactful investment. We have been talking about that. Okay, so these are the social elements, I would say. The fact that, however, I mean that I'm a bit critical here in this case, even though we have SRI, we have impactful investment and whatnot, but we can see that, there is no social element there really, but rather than it's always commercial driven. Even though I'm not saying that it is not good, it is much better than pure commercial. At least, you have SRI, responsible in investment, which is much better as compared to the commercially driven investment. Okay, but we can't see, I mean, that deep down, all of us understand and realize that actually, we need to be doing more. Where are the social element of Islamic finance, products, instruments, and infrastructure? It's always there. Eh? So the question, can we do better? Can we contribute more? Okay. So again, I did mention this earlier, that I think this is the high time for us to highlight the beauty, the strength, the substance of our religious instruments, which have been mentioned by Allah in Quran, in Hadith, about the beauty of wakaf, zakat, sadaqah, right? Not to say that trading is not good. No, it is there. But, in the Quranic verses, it's always that when you do trading, you are profit driven. At the same time, always remember that there's another mechanism that you are doing, okay, that you need to be exploring and really adopting in your life as regards to the welfare, helping one another. Okay, so we are looking for these instruments, Islamic social finance, okay, that would be able to contribute more, okay, to contribute more as regards to the development of the ummah, I would say. Yeah? So, of course, B40, M40 also need definitely, we call it help, particularly in the case of COVID. Yeah. In Malaysian context, I put a bit more, this is very much Malaysian flavor. I believe that, I'm very grateful. I think I really love the idea of value-based intermediation, because the basis of value-based intermediation is the Maqasid Shariah. 2018, when Central Bank introduced the VBI, at that point of time, we kind of a bit puzzled what Central Bank would like to do. Okay. But now we realize that actually There's something beautiful out of this value-based intermediation. Simply that I can say that value-based intermediation, here we go beyond profit. We, of course, not to say that we eliminate profit altogether. No, profit is always in our basket. If I'm an Islamic bank, profit is always on my right hand. But at the same time, I must be doing any activities, business, whatever operation product that I offer that really, really touch the people, really meaningful to the people, rather than only profit making on me. So there are other things that matters. What are the value that Islamic banks are carrying all the way along? These are always the question that actually not only me, but I believe you and many of Islamic finance practitioners always have here in mind. Okay, what can we do better? Yes, we understand commercial, we are very good, the growth is very good, but are we really making the impact to the people? So that's always the question. Okay, so what value are you, what we call it, that we would like to adopt in your, what we call it, institution? Central bank, okay, in the context of Malaysia, always, they leave to the Islamic bank, respective Islamic bank. You can choose what value that you want to absorb, you put in your, what we call it, your business operation and whatnot. So some bank goes for financial literacy. For example, one of the bank that I'm sitting as Shariah committee, okay, we agree that we want to do financial literacy being our main value that we are going to, what we call it, communicate to the people. So this financial literacy shall always be embedded in any product strategy and whatnot. Some goes for a different, okay, for charity, for example. So that depends. I mean that you may have heard, Dr. Irum may know, Bank Islam, for example, they champion charity, sadaqah. So that's why they come out with sadaqah house. Okay? So you need to identify what is the value, the good value that you are holding. And it has to be translated throughout the operation. Okay? So having this value, okay, uphold into your activities and whatnot. So this is where you are different than conventional. You are really touching the heart of people. You are really touching the life of people. That's what we mean. Okay. So these are the trusts. I'm not going to go into detail. Okay. You can read this, of course. The document is available online. It's accessible to everyone. Okay. Now, again, when I look into being a Shariah background people, Shariah, what we call it, advisor, of course, Shariah always matters. So we can see that VBI is definitely aligned to the principles of Maqasid al-Shariah. Okay, we know you have read many literatures, criticizing Islamic finance, whereby, there are less maqasid and whatnot. They are not really maqasid and whatnot. Okay, I mean that, not to say that it's sad to acknowledge, but the fact that, yeah, that's the constraint. That is basically the challenge that we face in Islamic finance. So through the incentive, the initiative of VBI, for example, but not necessarily you have a VBI. It's very good if, for example, the country can choose, or the respective Islamic financial institution choose what are the value that you want to portray. The value that being your corporate value, okay, that you are going to adopt in the respective institution. Make sure that the value must always be Shariah value, recognized by Shariah, because Shariah must always be our guiding, what we call it, principles. Okay. My conclusion, of course, here when we talk about pandemic, something that is beyond our imagination, there must be some wisdom, there must be some hikmah behind that. What we should be doing, always syukur, or whatever happened, alhamdulillah, we are still here, we can still eat and whatnot. Okay, always positively thinking about Allah. There must be some blessing in disguise or whatever happened. And last but not least, of course, helping one another is one of the aspects that is very much highly needed at this point of time. The point is simple, that whatever happened, we must be very positive, that we can go through this. We must be together, and then definitely, if we put our belief in Allah Subhanahu Wa Taala, there must be some what we call it solution of whatever happened. Okay. So, and again, when I said this, even though my what we call it statement just now is very much individual, but that can be reflected to in the perspective of Islamic banks themselves. Okay. Of course, I like this what we call it sentences talking about, of course, this issue of pandemic still there, but then this is the time, the opportunity for us, particularly Islamic banks, to show that we are different. It's a very challenging, okay, but the fact that now or whatever happened, we need to be thinking out of the box. We shouldn't be thinking like conventional banker anymore. Previously, the way how we think is we are banker, but now it's a different ball game altogether. Okay. So of course, since we are academic, so I put this as well. I think this is something that me, Dr. Irum, okay, and then all of us need to be what we call it considering seriously, because we need to be doing something. We need, of course, to me, the role of academic institution, we need to nurture the talents. I mean that the students are our talent, Dr. Irum. So these are the student, the future leader of Islamic finance. So we rely on you. Okay, you are going to be the future professionals and leader in Islamic finance. Okay. Well, we talk about research, yes. Dr. Irum also shared with me that some of you are doing research now. So make sure that your topic, the research, something that can be used. So that's why we are talking about applied research. Something that come up with the research that that's the best actually. Okay, the best research is that whereby when you find the solution, you will be able to implement in the industry. It must not necessarily big thing. You definitely, by one research, you cannot change the system. Yeah? But of course, it needs a group, a team of you, okay, to change the system. So you only contribute one simple aspect, but your friend will be contributing to the other. Of course, okay. Another thing that we as academic institution, I think, something that we look at is that our curriculum. Okay, curriculum in terms of Islamic finance, because we need to have a good talent who are ready to go to the market and then say that I am professional, I can contribute well. We doesn't want our graduate talent, for example, only the follower, but rather than you need to be very innovative, to be thinking. So this is where the challenge that the educator people like us, and Dr. Irum, how are we going to motivate the students? Okay, so this is where, but of course students is always motivated. It's either actually students or lecturer are motivated, but I hope that the two, you need two to tango, then you will be able to contribute to the what we call it the ecosystem. Okay, I think I am done, Dr. Irum, and then afterward maybe we discuss on the what we call it open for questions, and then maybe possibility on the possible research topics. How are we going to do, Dr. Irum?
Prof, I would like to request you if you can continue with the research topics so that they have the complete idea, and then we will have question and answer.
Yeah. I'm just looking into the possible research topic that here generally, okay, you can do something that is impact of COVID-19 to Islamic finance, particularly your own respective, what we call it, jurisdiction. Yes, there's report out there, but what is the real issues and challenges faced by your Islamic banker? I think this is something that we need to be looking at, because we need to understand our own people, our own what we call it institutions. So issues and challenges faced by Islamic banks during COVID to face the issues of COVID-19 would be something that is very interesting. You can do the interview, for example, right, and then see what are they facing, what are the issues, what are the issues that they face. Okay, so you will be able to prepare, okay, for future crisis, if any, for example. Yeah. So we need to document all this. The topic might be very, very simple, you know, but again, this is unprecedented event. So we need to document the details of each of the, you know, Islamic banks in particular, what are the issues that they face, and therefore, you know, it can be recorded for us to learn in future. From the Shariah perspective, I can see that, you know, the issue that I highlighted earlier in terms of the Shariah implication on the moratorium exercises, because the way how Malaysia is doing might be different than what Pakistan banks are doing, right? So there are always some Shariah issues there. Okay, my what we call it experience, okay, dealing with the Islamic bank, there's a number of Sharia issues that we need to be handling properly. So Sharia implication on the moratorium, maybe you can see into the how the different treatment of moratorium between one bank to the other. Those who are capable to do Sharia study, you can examine whether those exercises comply to the Sharia principle or not. So, because definitely there's no study so far. We do not know. There's no resolution specifically on what's going to happen. Previously, it's easy for us to refer to IOFI, OIC, Fake Academy, but now, no. So, study like this definitely help. Okay, Islamic Bank. Maqasid Syariah is something that interesting for us to do. Yeah, okay. Of course, my area of what we call it interest is Sharia governance. To me, this is again a very interesting topic that you can do. What are the role of board and management? Okay, as regards to I'm just putting the spearheading social aspects. What are they doing so far? Or are they just like the normal board for conventional bank? What is important to them is profit. What are they doing? How different they are? And then you can go for specifically on the board, how the board and management strategize in terms of the issues faced by the COVID, for example. There's something that we can look at as well. Okay, Sharia audit is a different kind of Sharia audit exercise that they need to be doing. So I think also my view is that this is aspect that you can also look at. You can interview auditors, for example. Okay, Sharia audit. What are they facing? Okay, because they will be doing something that is different. They need to come up with their scope, which is different than the normal one. Of course, reporting requirements is something. My suggestion is good if you can study IOFI, what we call it, report or as regards to the COVID-19, and then you can see whether that IOFI recommendation is suitable to be applied in the Pakistan context or not. Okay, because that is good practice, but there could be something that you can do to improve. For example, you can see that, okay, you can give the feedback. To me, these topics are something that you can directly contribute to the society, contribute to the Islamic finance industry. Okay, so that's what I mean by applied research just now. Okay, applied research. So that because you will be able to contribute, and then, if you do this, definitely what my suggestion here is that, you once you finish your study, for example, you can arrange for presentation of your research finding. Yeah. To the bank and whatnot. Definitely, Dr. Irum can arrange, for example, something like this, so that industry benefit from your findings. We are looking for the what we call it the solution now. We don't find anywhere so far. Okay, so it's good. It's timely actually for you to do this what we call it, this topic related to COVID-19. This is among other things that I can think of at this point of time. Okay, thank you, Dr. Irum.
Jazakallah khair Kasiran, Professor Dr. Rusni Hassan.
Yeah.
No, I didn't introduce you in detail because if I start introducing you in detail, then the 1 hour is still less. Mashallah, you have the expertise by working in the Sharia Advisory Committee. You are Chairman Sharia Advisory Committee of different banks, mashallah, and you're also member of different Sharia committees. So I understand you have very busy schedule. This is why I was very happy when you accepted the invitation to deliver a talk to the MS Islamic Banking and Finance students. So we have here two questions right now ready. The first question is, in this pandemic, it has been observed that it's written in the chat box. So if you can open the chat box, you can see that the students really appreciate your presence. And the question is, in this pandemic, it has been observed that in some jurisdictions, rescheduling and restructuring has been allowed. Why can't the Islamic banks allow it while assessing the situation of a customer as and when where it is needed in the forms of moratorium?
Okay. So actually rescheduling and restructuring is the normal exercise for the Islamic bank. In the case of, default, for example, in the case where the customer is having what we call it difficulties in terms of the payment. So it's always being there in the Islamic banking system because, we must be giving some kind of flexibility, okay, facilitate the customer. One way is, of course, restructure as well as rescheduling. So bank must have that actually. Okay, so moratorium is, however, a different situation, not because voluntary, I would say, request from the customer or client, but rather than it is instructed by the government or supervisor or regulator on the Islamic banks to give. Okay, so that is where the difference is, so that's why again I did mention about the question of consent, the question of need to get the taradi, okay, because the normal situation, restructure and reschedule is initiated either by both parties after the negotiation, after the communication been made. Okay, the question, the issue of consent does not raise in that particular case. They should be fully aware what is the new obligation, what is the new, what we call it, price, for example, because that have been negotiated. Now, the situation is different, however, in the case of moratorium because it is imposed on bank and therefore there's not much room of the negotiation just now. So what prevails in the case of moratorium is definitely the Shariah committee need to weigh between the two mafsadah. Okay, so it is always the principles of akhafu ad-dararain. You choose the less between the two evil, because you will not be able to communicate directly to the customer that what is the best way then we want to do. Okay, so the point is that reschedule and restructure is something that is allowed, is the practice of the bank. However, the moratorium is slightly different because it is mandated rather than initiated by the customer. Am I answering you?
Yes, thank you so much, doctor. There is another question. In Sharia, is there any requirement to ask consent or permission from shareholders of Islamic financial institutions before giving any relaxation to customer? Because shareholders are actual owners of Islamic financial institution and not the management.
Okay. Now, from the Sharia perspective, shareholders are parties to the contract. Okay. Shareholders can either come, okay, what we call it in the form of partner, musyarakah, or mudarabah. Depends. Most of the bank, the concept is musyarakah rather than mudarabah. Okay. Now, whether parties must give the consent or not, the answer to that is yes. Okay. So that is the original principle. However, most of the shareholders, okay, but that depends on the arrangement. However, okay, shareholders may choose to say that, okay, the management, I mandate you, I give the mandate to you to decide for me, and then you do, and whatever that you do must be always for the interest of me as a shareholder. Okay, so that is what the practice of Islamic bank, okay, and then most of the bank. Rather than, of course, shareholders may also decide, but most of the time it's the management who decide. Okay, but whatever the decision must be always for the best interest of the company. That is governed under corporate governance principles. Under the Shariah, yes, originally the original principles that you must get consent. But the parties may agree or give the what we call it mandate to the management to decide. Okay, so that is my response to that. Okay.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rusni. So rescheduling can be exercised by mutual negotiation between a customer and a bank.
Yes. Yes. Okay, except in the moratorium, as Hadid mentioned. But other times it's always, negotiation.
There is another question that moratorium is coming from the regulatory authority, but still the banks are supposed to take consent from the customer or no?
So that depends. There are two situations. This is what happened, I think, across the board actually. Globally, the practice is that there are two situations. One is the mandatory moratorium. Mandatory means that the regulator may say that to this category of people, okay, maybe M40 or whatever category of people that you must be giving. So the issue of consent may not be relevant in this case because it is mandated. Okay, it is mandated. So you don't need that kind of consent from the customer and whatnot. These are normally for retail, small customer who have small financing, which there's not much effect to the what we call it bank. If Islamic bank were to say that I'm waiving the profit and whatnot. The second category is of which is an optional. Okay, optional means that there must be some kind of communication between the bank and the customer, whether they are agreeable to take the moratorium or not. Okay, so these are the people, for example, they say, oh, I don't need help, means that I can, even though government give me 3 months moratorium, means that I don't need to pay my installment, but well, I have no issue with the money, I'm going to pay normally. So I can choose. Or you may also say that, well, I have money, but I'm still not paying you. I want to take that moratorium facility even though I have money. So number one is that just now, the optional just now, the one who said that communication is that I'm not taking because I want to continue. Means that I have money, I don't need that flexibility of payment within 3 months, the moratorium period. Number two, that I have money, okay, the people or group of customer who have money, a lot of money, okay, but they choose to take. They said, I'm not going to pay. So these are more on the optional. So the businessman, for example, corporate, they may choose the second one because they can get, that let's say 6 months, okay, they don't pay the installment altogether, it could be 1 million already, and they can do other business out of that amount of money. Yeah, so that depends on the two ways of what we call it, either mandatory or what we call it option moratorium. Yeah.
All right. Jazakallah khair, Doctor. So do we have any other questions, students? Would you like to ask or? Prof, any advice to the students, those who are writing their thesis, especially to them.
Yeah. What are the area of most of the students' background? The area of their that they are
We
interested to
are,
do the
yes,
research on?
we have a group of people who are coming with the Sharia background, and then we have
Okay.
bankers. So most
Mm-hmm.
of them are working actually.
Okay. Okay. So to me just now, number one, my advice, when you want to do your research, don't be too ambitious. Not most of no more some of students sometimes when they want to do the research, they want to solve all issues faced by Islamic banks. You can't be doing that. We are not capable of doing that. Choose the topic or the issues that maybe small to you, but what is important is that you will be able to provide practical solution, so that it will be implemented, and then at the bank's level, particularly for those bankers who are working, the working bankers. Number two is that if you are working, my suggestion is always that choose the topic that you are familiar with, the area of your work and whatnot, rather than you need to study a new topic altogether. That may be taking, will be very challenging to you. Yeah, I have a student, for example, who is in what we call it. He's handling Shariah compliance, but he wants to do on capital adequacy. I said, no, please do the area that you are handling now. Because you want to do well, because I'm very interested to do on capital adequacy, yes, but you need to do another reading altogether. Okay, that may be what we call it a bit challenging to you. Because at the end of the day, time is also of important to you to complete or to finish your study. Yeah. So again, don't be too ambitious. And then the very important one, the very, very important is always communication with your supervisor. Supervisor will definitely guide you. Don't be like, okay, you meet her, Dr. Irum, your supervisor, once in the beginning, and then afterward, no more, I do not know, cannot. Okay, so always meet the supervisor, because supervisor will be there always to help you, to guide you. I know writing is not easy. You got stuck here and there. Sometimes you do not know what to write. So this is where you need to go and meet Dr. Irum and ask them for advice. What should I do? She, inshallah, will be able to guide you to do what's next.
Inshallah.
Okay? Inshallah.
Jazakallah. Doctor, last question. I just got it.
Yeah.
So last question for today's session is, it is the first time the assets of Islamic financial institutions are at stake, which were not at risk during the financial crisis 2007-2008. How
Yeah.
IFI managed this crisis if IFI are so conservative and not caring too much for SMEs?
Uh, the question is here, Dr. Irum,
Uh,
in the chat. In the chat?
Actually, it is not in the chat, but let me just
Okay.
rewrite it. It is
Okay, read. Can
privately.
you, please?
Yeah. So it is first time the assets of IFI are at stake.
Okay.
It was not
The
at,
asset?
yeah, the asset. It was not
Asset,
at
okay.
stake during 2007-2008 crisis,
Okay.
as per the research. So the question is basically, if Islamic financial institutions are conservative, then they won't be able to take care of SMEs.
Oh, okay, okay. Now, the last financial crisis, okay, is of a different issue. I would say that the issue on the last financial crisis was debt. Okay, So I mean that, you know, you can read, there are many reports on wave of debt, global wave of debt and whatnot. World Bank have issued quite a number of reports on this. It is a reality that you know, we are, I mean that the whole economy, okay, was, I would say, you are drowned with that. Okay, Islamic finance, however, come in a different way. So even though that we are, the business is always debt based, there are of course many, okay, the murabaha, the istisna are debt based. But our debt is, we must have the requirement of asset. The asset is debt, okay, rather than purely loan. Conventional are purely loan, okay. Islamic, however, not based on loan. Loan is going to be very, very, very minimum, but rather than the debt in Islamic finance are created out of sale transaction. When we talk about sale, the requirement of sale, you must have an asset. Okay. If I were to enter into a contract of sale with Dr. Irum, I buy a car from Dr. Irum, I pay her money, she gave me the car. Okay. In the case of whatever happened, we have the car to recourse to. I mean that we can go back to the car and then we can sell to the third party, we can get the money. That's what my point is. Okay, so the last global crisis, financial crisis, was because of over debt. I mean that debt. This financial crisis, however, is a different one. It's not, of course, resulted, one of the impact of that is debt created, but it's not the issue of over collateralization of debt. The issue is not that. The issue is very much that we cannot work. There's no economic activity at all. Yeah. So yes, how Islamic Bank can help out is by focusing on the SME. SME are the most affected. Not only Malaysia actually, but all over. Yeah, all over. Because SME, they don't have, their capital are not that big, you know, their capability of doing the business, their business are not robust. So how then Islamic Bank can come out with a product that can facilitate the need of SME? Okay, without compromising the Shariah requirement of asset just now. Because regardless of SME or high net worth customer, okay, high net worth customer, the requirement of Shariah is that. Means that the asset must be there. Okay. However, we must also consider, I mean that this is where the innovation and moving forward, again, as I did mention, my point earlier is that you must be thinking out of box. Previously, mudarabah may not be, you know, your preference, but now it could be something that you can be seriously considering when you do the product, when you offer the product to SME. Previously, it was always murabaha. It was always istisna. It was always ijarah. Okay, but now it could be in the form of mudarabah. You can help out as well. There's a mechanics that you can do. It's just that you need to tone down your requirement. You need to tone down your expectation. Okay, your risk assessment is different now. It cannot be too stringent, but it cannot be too relaxed too. So you need to be balanced. So you know, if, for example, the question is talking about the conservative, referring to the debt, I think, you know, Islamic finance are still, the question is still relevant to Islamic finance, because even though we have debt, but then again, we do debt. There are also, of course, transactions involving debt, but then again, we have the basis of real asset debt. Okay? So we cannot compromise those requirements, because those requirements are the Shah requirement of ACAD. So regardless of whether high net worth or SME, we must be able to develop products which are, you know, comply with the Shah, same time meeting the expectation and the need of SME. Okay, because it is there. Shariah provide the solution for that. It's just that we are not comfortable because we are not familiar with those products. Okay, so it's time. It's high time for us now to explore, be innovative. No one is going to, I mean that, of course, you know, again, I did mention about bold. You need to be bold enough because there's no one who can say that you are wrong now. It's just that do it prudently, do your proper assessment, and then it's time for you. So this is where the opportunity that goes, that are in front of us for us to explore the innovative product, inshallah.
Jazakallah khair, Professor. Thank you so much once again for speaking to my students and especially sharing your valuable points with them. There is a virtual round of applause for you from all of us. So I hope you can see that.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
So Jazakallah khair, and some of the students have given their comments in the chat box as well. Alhamdulillah.
Thank
Inshallah,
you.
looking forward to meet you again. Take care of yourself. And
thank you.
Assalamu alaikum.
Okay. Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. So I leave now, Dr. Irum.
Yes.
Take care, everyone. And all the best to students in your research. Okay. Always consult Dr. Irum. She's the best that I know.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.